Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everyone and welcome to an episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we will be discussing the last bit of what we've got for Halloween, the spooky season.
Yeah.
We will be discussing a beloved franchise, a beloved film franchise and movie franchise and everything franchise, and it's transcended space, time, and, well, mediums of all sorts. You've got video games, comic books, and
TV shows.
even TV shows and even a musical, damn it. We're talking about Evil Dead, the gift that keeps on giving. A movie that has spawned the careers of Sam Raimi, who has very bizarre directorial techniques that no one had ever seen before. And Bruce Campbell, who, well, what hasn't been said about this man? His legend grows.
Needs no introduction.
Needs zero. But yes, before we do that, we will just get to our quick little rundown of the things that you can do to support the show. Why Does This Exist? We're a show that talks about the weirdest things going on in pop culture, whether it's a movie franchise like we're about to do, a movie like we did a few weeks ago with Big Trouble in Little China, a video game series like we just did with Dead Rising, or anything else of that matter, whether it's about to happen or it's happened a long time ago, or maybe it's currently in the works. We will discuss it at some point in time. There's a few ways that you can support the show, one of which is by just simply, the easiest way is just going to facebook.com/whydoesthisexistpod, finding us there, and just, liking and engaging and stuff like that. Or, if you want to turn it up a notch, you could go over to our YouTube channel. I believe that, too, is Why Does This Exist Pod. You do all the things over there that you would normally do, and that's great, I guess. I don't really care. And you can also, if you really want to show us your love, you can even email us over at whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com. It is not whydoesthisexistpod@gmail.com. That will be too simple, and some jackass who isn't even using it is already taken that one. So we got kind of screwed over there.
Oh,
but,
son of a bitch.
But I digress. The other ways that you can that you can support us, if you really, really, really care and find the compassion in your heart, where we're constantly getting new articles from our man Tony all the time, you can do that on patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. You can give us as little as $1 or as much as you want, and we will let you into the Discord server, and you can hang out there, you can chat with us, and all the other folks who are there for reasons beyond their control, and you can see what our schedule is, what things we've got coming up, some articles that are in the pipeline, or you can even just kick around some ideas. Maybe if you're a good little boy, girl, dog, or person, place, or thing, then we might let you on the show, and you can hang out, and you can hang out and just be on the show and give us all of your dietary, nutritional facts and myths and things like that. Or we've got another one. If you don't feel like subscribing to us and you just want to give us $1 and just go on your merry way, and then that can be that, and we never have to speak to each other ever again. You can head on over to buymeacoffee.com/whydoesthisexist. That's right. All you do is you go to buymeacoffee.com/whydoesthisexist. It's very, very simple. You click the link and you give us money. You simply just give us money right away, however much you want, and then you go get lost. And we never engage ever again. That might be where the smart money is give us money and you go away and then we will go away and that's that. But that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. The Evil Dead. What a franchise.
What a franchise. I don't think there's ever been a cult movie that has gained so much popularity and become such a cultural icon, because Ash and Evil Dead in general has really become like huge cultural icons, and Ash has like been voted like on numerous lists as one of the greatest movie characters of all time.
And he is.
Yeah. His catchphrases were like used like extensively. They almost became a meme kind of.
For many years, I used the term groovy.
Yes.
And that was that. I only used it to reference Evil Dead.
And basically, like everything in like every other word that Duke Nukem says is an Ash Williams quote, basically. Like,
yeah. I also named my fists my boomstick.
Yeah.
My boomsticks. So if anybody wants to go toe to toe with me, I will have to break out my boomsticks or my chainsaw and my boomstick.
Yeah.
Which would probably be a little bit more appropriate. I won't tell you which one's which. You'll have to find out in the dark alley, and well, hopefully you get up, because then if you don't, I'll go to jail.
Yeah. But Evil Dead started out, interestingly enough, as basically almost like a student film. Like, it was based off of a short film that Sam Raimi had directed that also starred Bruce Campbell, called Within the Woods.
Yes.
And basically they took the concept from that short film and turned it into a feature-length movie. And this was Sam Raimi's first movie, first feature-length.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they had been friends for a long time,
Yeah.
for like since they were pretty much kids.
Yeah.
Was Ash? Well, I mean, Ash was Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, and his brother Ted Raimi, who was who worked on the first couple of films as well as his brother Ivan Raimi. And they worked together on many projects, but most of the time they would just goof around and just make all these wacky movies. And Bruce Campbell didn't think anything was going to come of it. He just did it because it was fun. But he did kind of get bit by the acting bug from this.
Yeah.
And he started performing in high school plays and things like that. And he got involved in his community theater. But he didn't really think that anything would come of it. It was just like whenever Sam wanted to make a movie, he called Bruce, and Bruce was like, all right, fine. And they did that. And, well, you could find all of that out from Bruce Campbell's first book, If Chins Could Kill, which is really great because it's pretty much not only his life, but it's also like a book about making Evil Dead 1 and a book about indie movies and like B-list actors.
Yes.
Like there's a whole chapter where, I mean, it's a short chapter, but it's a whole chapter breaking down how much how much a B-list actor actually makes over the course of like 2 years while they're making a full-time movie. Like, because it's a smaller independent movie, it's not a big budget where like, where they're like, where they shoot for 3 months and then they hand it off to the crew and they do the rest and then they work on other projects. This is more like you're working on, because you're a B-list actor, you're very heavily involved in other things that an actor normally wouldn't do. So so let's say you get $100,000 to do this movie. Okay, great. That sounds awesome. The movie takes 2 years. You're working on it day in and day out, so that's your job. So you
Long
cut that
hours
in,
too.
yeah, long hours. So you cut that in half. So you're making 50 grand a year. That's still not bad, right? Especially for like 1980s money
Yeah,
or whatever it
1980.
is.
Yeah, 1970s, 1980s. That was actually a decent living.
Yeah, even 1990s you could still like get by,
Yes.
but um, but not so much today. Anyway, so let's say you're making 50 grand spread out over 2 years on this one movie that paid you 100. That would be great, but there's always the invisible hand. So you got to pay your taxes, and because you make $100,000, you are now moved up into this higher tax bracket, and you got to give about a third of your income to the government for reasons that no one quite understands why we do this anymore. Um, and anyway, and and then so now you've got a third of that money, right? You've got 2/3 of that money that you now
Hmm.
have to cut with 2 years, right? So now so you're starting at around 60. So now you're spreading it into like 30. Yeah, you're spreading it to like, okay, you're starting with 70, so you're making 35 a year
Hmm.
essentially just doing this. That's pretty bad. And if you've
Yeah.
got kids, if you're and like, you know, God forbid you have kids and or are divorced, all that alimony, you left with nothing. So it is crazy. Um,
Yeah.
like the difference between an A list and a B list and everything else below actors, of how much they have to do and how like little they actually are coming home with from the movies. But yes, back to where we were. I just wanted to get that out there. But that book is amazing. I haven't
Mhm.
read the second one that he released a few years ago, but that's a continuation of that. But it's a wonderful book. I recommend it to anybody who is just interested in these people or the movies or Evil Dead, or even just figuring out how the movie business works.
Mhm.
It is very detailed and it's really cool. But yeah, they
Yeah.
were friends for a long time. They got into it, and then and then Sam Raimi wrote Within the Woods. They did the short film. Then they turned it into the first movie, which was
Yes.
terrifying and iconic.
Mhm. And it's interesting that, you know, so Evil Dead 2 is almost like a kind of like a, I don't want to call it a complete remake, but it's like a soft remake almost of the first one. Like it kind of retells the story of the first movie, but then like expands on it a little bit. So it was
Yes.
interesting the way they did that, because that wasn't like like now it's like every other fucking movie that comes out is a remake of something else. But back then, especially within that time period, because it only came out a few years after the first one. The first one came out in 1981, I believe, and
Yep.
then Evil Dead 2 came out in 87. So, you know, it's interesting that like they only took that long to kind of do it. And again, it like is like they definitely lightened it up for the second one. They definitely added more of the comedy elements that the series kind of became like famous for, as being more of a horror comedy. That was definitely more in the second movie.
And that's
Um,
what ended up defining the series. Like that's the style of horror that they ended up going with,
right.
which was very different for the time. Like you weren't seeing a
Yes.
whole lot. You were seeing a little bit of that, but I think for the most part, if you saw it, most of the time it was because it was a very low budget movie,
Yeah, and it
and what
was
they were trying to do
inadvertently
just,
funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it just looked bad because they didn't have the resources to make it look
Yes.
as terrifying. So if the lighting, so a lot of the times this would be because the lighting was too bright, so it exposed certain things where they either looked really goofy or it clearly looked fake. And
Yeah.
that gets worse over time, where like, let's just say at that, like during that point in time, the lighting was what it needed to be. Well,
Mhm.
now that everything has been like updated and remastered and the resolution is higher, you can spot so much more of the flaws in it, and
Yeah.
they now become funny by accident in some cases.
Yeah.
But the reason why Evil Dead 2 was the reason why it is like why it why they ended up starting it the way that they do it, because it's like it's it's it basically retells the first movie in like a quick, like it basically gives you the cliff notes on the first movie in like a recap, but it almost reimagines it,
Yeah.
and then it starts, and then like about 20 minutes in, Evil Dead 1 ends and then Evil Dead 2 begins.
Yeah.
Pretty much once Ash gets bitten by, pretty much once the Evil Dead itself, which I loved how we never see it, and we'll get
Yeah.
back into it. I love how you never really know what it is. Um, that and like once he wakes up, then that's where Evil Dead 2 actually starts. But the reason why they had to do that was, this is very bizarre, but somehow the they didn't own the rights to Evil Dead.
Yeah.
So I guess it was part of it. It may have been like, it was probably part of the deal. It was part of the deal that they signed with the I believe the film distribution company for the first Evil Dead movie, and I'm sure it was something in the notes where it was probably a stipulation that they weren't aware of, and I'm sure it had something to do with, if this didn't make above a certain threshold of money, then they would then the distributor would take on the rights to the thing, and they can re-release it and redistribute it and do a million things of whatever they wanted, so that way they could recoup the money over time, where they didn't have the rights, so they had to, but they were making the sequel, but they were greenlit to make the sequel because it made enough money to make the sequel,
Hmm.
and they just kind of were beside themselves and like, well, let's just redo the first. Let's just do like a quick redo of the first one. Then let's just
Yeah.
forget it. Let's just change it, and that kind of is also what led down the direction of the slapstick horror that they do in the rest of the franchise.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's also unique in that it kind of establishes Ash Williams as more of like this action movie star somewhat, because he like, yeah, he gets like possessed, but then like he like breaks the possession and he starts to fight back against the demons, and then he gets his hand chopped off. So he like, eventually grafts a chainsaw to his hand and saws off the barrel of the shotgun that he has, and it just becomes like this like badass like demon slayer basically.
right, and
Um
he ends up getting two iconic weapons. He also has to fight the hand that he cuts off, because
yeah,
he
which
has
is
to cut off his
hilarious.
hand because the hand gets possessed.
And he's like,
So
shooting holes in the walls trying to it becomes like a Tom and Jerry episode somewhat, like
yes,
with him trying to like shoot the stupid hand that's now possessed and crawling around like thing.
yeah,
uh it's just like, and he's like shooting holes in the wall, then of course like the whole like cabin comes to life, like it's like an evil Beauty and the Beast, and he just starts like laughing along with all like the demons that are like mocking him. It's like, Ash is really like this different character. He's not like, not a typical horror movie main character that's like scared and running for his life the whole time. He just like is like fed up with the demon shit and is fighting back.
yeah. He is slowly like, it's almost like, the way that I view it is, he's slowly going insane, and in order to cope with everything, he's like not only trying to fight off the Evil Dead itself
Yeah.
and trying to understand what the hell it is, but he's also grappling with his sanity, and he's trying not to succumb to insanity. He's trying to still keep his heads about it. So he's adapting in a very bizarre way, and it's tearing him apart.
Well, he also ends
So
up
like what,
having
because
to kill
when you
basically everybody that is with him because they all get
right,
possessed one by one.
right, but what's different is you can see his misery
Hmm.
throughout the whole thing. Like in all of in the other installments and all of the other characters that end up, becoming Ash like, they're still terrified, and they're still scared, and they're still afraid and nervous, and they end up getting the chutzpah for what they need to, like, to do the job.
Hmm.
But the difference is Ash, he's not scared.
No.
First of all, and he doesn't miss people like the others do. The others still grieve in some capacity. Where Ash, he wails and he moans as he's progressing through these stages of grief, and he's like, you can see the pain on his face,
Yeah.
and you can hear it in his voice, and like it's he's not only slowly going insane, but he's going through the 5 stages of grief, and it happens a few times. He like with tries to bargain in ways with the Evil Dead, and that of course never works. He's also, and he goes through obviously anger and a little bit of depression, but not too much.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think they
he like you see the changes with him, and I think that's what helps the character resonate because you see it happen.
they kind of touch on it a little bit in the television series Ash versus Evil Dead, which I have not personally watched, but I've heard very good things about.
Oh, I loved that. They it got such a bad deal that they
they got
it got
screwed.
they really did. It should have ended. They should have at least given it another season to end
Yes.
properly.
But like the Ash in Ash vs Evil Dead, he's like, someone that is like very like a broken character. Like, you could tell at that point that the shit he had to go through has really like affected him, and he's like kind of like kind of bottomed out, somewhat. He's like, and even like Bruce Campbell has stated, he quote, the quote is like, he has survivor's guilt. You could have a heyday with his PTSD. He's a war veteran. He doesn't want to talk about it, and he'll lie about the stump on his hand to impress the ladies. It's a guy who has got some issues. He's emotionally stunted, but he's a guy you want in the foxhole next to you. So it's like basically like it all this shit that he went through throughout all the movies as like stacked up against him, and now he's like kind of like a broken man at the end of it, kind of.
Yeah. And well, I mean, the other thing is you do like you don't. What I love about this is they always summon it the same way. Of course, there's a scientist or an Egyptologist or a historian that. Well, I guess it would be all those things. There's always an explorer who, anthropologist. That's the word I was looking for. There's always someone who excavates the Book of the Dead, which is the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, and they end up reading, and it's this ancient, well, it's the Book of the Dead. It's this ancient book bound in human flesh that has all of these demonic incantations written on it, and it's one of those things where over time it was thought to be the Book of the Afterlife, and yes and no, because this has demonic supernatural powers, and the ink is in human blood, so there's a whole lot of bad juju surrounding this thing. And there's always some poor sap who stumbles upon it and reads the incantations and summons the evil dead. And somehow the evil dead kind of goes dormant after a while.
Mm-hmm.
They never really explain. Well, they like it is there is a spell to reverse the evil dead and to bring it and like to push it back into the netherworld.
Yeah.
Which we see in the second one.
Yes.
But it's obviously very difficult to do, and we have to assume that this does eventually happen every time, but we don't know how many times for certain that the evil dead have escaped their wherever it is that they reside. But yeah, you have to make it flesh, so you kind of see the we do see the physical manifestation of it from the trees, and it like takes over the forest and it lives everywhere basically.
I think the Evil Dead itself, the actual,
but we never actually see it. It's in the fog.
I think that the Kandarian demon itself is actually invisible to like the naked eye, and that's why it just possesses things. It's almost like it actually reminds me a lot of like the alien from The Thing. How it's
Mm.
like you don't know where it could be. It could be in anything at any time. Like anybody could be possessed. Any object could be possessed, basically. And it's like you'll never actually see what the real like what its true form is because it's always like trying to take over something else. Like maybe it can't manifest in a physical form in
Mm.
like reality, so that's why it always has to possess something.
Or is it the only time that you can actually see it is as it's possessing you, and
That
that's
could be
what
too.
that because they always shriek when they actually see it before they, and that's usually the last thing that happens before they become possessed by it.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those things. But yeah, it's you can't stop this thing because it'll just keep finding something
Yes.
else to possess,
Well, and that's like
and it'll
that's what happens like in every movie basically is like Ash ends up having to kill like everything that's like in the room because they keep like when he kills one thing the friggin' demon just possesses like the next thing and it's like and it just like is like an ongoing cycle.
yes, and they are very good at playing the psychological game with you.
Yeah.
They actually really enjoy torturing and like
Yeah.
and playing with their food. They're
Yes.
apex the Kandarian demons are apex predators, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
But yeah, he summons it. He summons the and the like. It's a zombie movie in that category, but we don't call them zombies. They're known as deadites
Yes.
in this, which I think is the coolest name for a zombie anyway.
And I wouldn't really even say they were a zombie necessarily. It's more of like a
No,
possessed body, you know, because like
yeah,
it becomes demonic in a way.
right, but everyone usually is kind of dead anyway. Like it
Yes.
usually kills them upon possession, and it slowly tears them apart from the inside and
Yes.
eats their souls, basically. So it it kind of it toes the line between zombie and demonic possession, and
Yep.
I think it gets lumped into the zombie category because of what the makeup, because of what the appearance is of the possessed,
Yeah.
and also how they physically behave and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, also even when they're like when they appear to be pretty dead, they're very much still alive because of the possession.
Yes.
But yeah, then we go over to Army of Darkness, which I mean, my favorite is Evil Dead 2. That's actually one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
It is in the top 3. It's number 2 to Jurassic Park. For a
Well,
long time it was number 1.
it's often hailed as the best one.
It
It
is.
didn't make as much money at the box office as Evil Dead 1 did, interestingly enough, because Evil Dead 1 had a like a much smaller budget and made more money. But I think Evil Dead 2 like really launched like the cult like status of the series. Like Evil Dead 2 made it into the cult phenomenon that it became and really put and made Ash Williams like the you know the icon of popular culture that he became.
Yes, which the weird way on how I discovered Evil Dead was there was a poster for Evil Dead 2 in the bowling alley that was by my childhood home for many years. That poster was just, there was no reason for it. The poster was just there when you first walk in for years, and no one ever complained about it and no one ever questioned it. It was just kind of there.
Mhm.
So it just hung over by the staircase, I believe, just a poster for Evil Dead 2, and I'll never forget it. Um, it was the one with the skull. Well, it was
Mhm.
just the typical one with the skull where it has the human eyes that
Yeah.
are staring at you. And like I just remember going there when I was like 7, 8, and just every year they never got rid of that poster as
Mhm.
long as I went there, even into my like early 20s. The like I don't think it I think it's a different bowling alley now. I think someone else bought it or they demoed it or something like that. But yeah, it was just its shell lanes for whatever reason, and I don't know why.
Mhm.
But and they never had any other movie posters there. It was just that one for some strange reason. And also, this was in the 90s, so Evil Dead 2 had already
But yeah,
been
a
out for
while,
like
a long
a
time.
decade.
Yeah.
I was born in 1990, so like this had already, by the time I was going to the bowling alley, the movie had been out for 10 years,
Yeah.
but it was just there for however long it lasted, which I
Huh.
think is funny.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I wonder
I
if maybe
don't.
the bowling alley was like a movie theater at one point or something, and they
I
just
don't.
kept that poster.
I don't think it was because even my parents remember like going to shell lanes in like the 80s and even the
Oh, so
70s.
it was always
It
a
was always
bowling
a
alley.
bowling alley.
That's
So I'm
interesting.
not. Yeah, they
That's a
just
weird thing to
happened.
have at a bowling alley.
Yes, it is. But okay, that's what they did, and then eventually one day in high school, I watched the movie and like realized why it was familiar. But
Yeah,
yeah, so then it goes over to Army of Darkness, which continues Evil Dead 2. This is really where you start to get the canon, the
yeah,
canonization.
yeah,
Is Army of Darkness, and you find out that there are multiple books of the dead, and he has to get the right one, and of course he gets the wrong one, and all these things happen. And the other issue, and this is in medieval times, and a lot of people really love this too. And then he
yeah,
fights Evil Ash, and you have like a whole medieval battle that is very much it takes a lot from Harryhausen's style of effects with
yeah,
and they utilize a lot of that with the skeleton army and stuff.
yeah.
And
Well, even in
it's a
Evil
lot
Dead
of
2, there's a lot of that style of like
yes.
creature effects of like using claymation to make these monstrous things, and it actually looks really good and holds up, I think.
Yes, it does. For the hand, there was like they had to like rejigger little like they had to take like floorboards and they like there's a Sam Raimi has an interesting technique that in the book they describe it as the Ramo cam,
Mhm.
where he pretty much does the, I mean now a lot of people do it in like horror, but like it's the first person view of whatever it is that's going on. So you get so like in that they have the first person view of the hand crawling towards something, or the signature shot is the first person view of the eyeball popping out of a zombie out of a deadite's head into and like going into a person's mouth and they choke on it, which is disgusting but funny the way
Mhm.
that they do it. And there's just all this ridiculous stuff like the giant blood wall after he shoots it, which I think at the
Yeah.
time had broken the record for the most amount of blood spent on a scene
Mhm.
until Dead Alive came along, Peter Jackson's third movie, which just I think spent 3 million on the in the zombie scene at the end.
Wow.
But yeah, that's another movie we'll have to talk about for another day because
Yeah.
it is really out there. Or at least we might even need to just do an episode on early Peter Jackson movies because they are very left. They're as left field as it gets, and it
Yeah.
is so unlikely that this is the same person who would go on to direct the Lord of the Rings movies
Yeah.
and win Academy Awards for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Army of Darkness comes along. We get cooler looking Deadites. We get a medieval setting,
And of
and
course, one of the greatest catchphrases in movie history. This is my boomstick.
yes,
A classic. Like it's just this also I think well, I mean,
also coined the term of endearment "primitive screwhead," which I still
yes.
use to this day.
Um Ash was also like or at Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness were also a huge inspiration for John Carmack when he was making Doom. And that's why like the super shotgun, which is literally a double barrel shotgun, and the chainsaw are like two of the iconic weapons from the original Doom games. And it's like literally taken directly from Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
And even like that you're this like lone guy that's just battling like armies of demons. It's the same concept, and it's basically like you're Ash Williams except you're a space marine and on Mars. But it's like it's very heavily based on Army of Darkness and Evil Dead.
Oh yeah. But But yeah, I mean, you get all kinds of wacky stuff in that. Like, you get the
Yeah.
Gulliver's Travels reference with like the mini ashes that,
Oh, yeah.
and he has to like destroy all of them. Or, um, it's just, I would say Army of Darkness is the campiest one,
Yeah.
but there's like the further evolution of the pain of Ash being Ash and not being able to talk about what he went through because he is the hero of time a title that only Link would be the person that he could have a conversation with, because the issue with the Hero of Time, as just so often the case, that all of you listeners in digital media device land would happen to know, is you save. There's a huge catch-22. Oh, and I guess Booster Gold would be the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Is, well, when you save time, no one knows you did it.
Yeah. Well, they kind of do, because in Evil Dead 2, they see that there's like this hero
There
that
is the prophecy.
yeah, exactly, that there was this hero in the Middle Ages that saved the world from the army of Deadites, and you look at the picture and it's clearly Ash. And then
Yes.
when Ash gets sucked into the portal and goes back to the Middle Ages, and he realizes what's happening, he just like screams out in agony, knowing that it's him. He has to fulfill the prophecy now. He's like the most unlikely and unwanted here. Like, doesn't want to do this shit at all. He just wants to go home. Like,
Yeah.
he gets like
he just
sucked
wanted to
into it
have a
constantly.
normal weekend with with his girlfriend and just go to a cabin in the woods. That's it.
Yeah.
There was no other thing. He wanted the night off from, he just like, God, he works at a supermarket. He works in the housewares department of like a department store, and it's like, God only knows how many hours this man worked to accrue that time off. Who knows, like, how, like, whether or not he had a cool boss or if his boss was just an asshole. And, he was really looking forward to this trip. Just him, his girlfriend, his friends. It was going to be a nice weekend just at the cabin in the woods. Yep. Maybe they always went to this cabin forever, and they didn't know what was in the basement this whole time. And you know what? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Ruined. Totally ruined. All it did was set him up. His whole childhood was a lie. His whole life was a lie. He was just there to fulfill an ancient prophecy that he had that he wanted nothing to do with. Yeah. So Ash is a very sympathetic character.
Yeah.
And the minute that I feel like the minute that he realizes that he is the hero of time, I think that's when he completely snaps.
Yeah. And I feel bad
because in Army of Darkness, he
literally just keeps getting dragged into this shit no matter what. Like, he can't get out of it.
Yeah, because the thing is, from Army of Darkness forward, he kind of like he's like, he just snaps, but he kind of accepts his fate because he's like, well, shit. And like from that point on, he's like, only concern is just fulfilling the prophecy.
Yeah. Well, it's like at that point that he realizes like that's the only way he's gonna get back home, is if he does it and like, fulfills the prophecy and finds it, and he's able to do the incantation and get back to where he's got to go. Right. And of course, every time they try to do the incantation, something gets fucked up, and Ash ends up getting screwed. Like, it's like literally every time. Like in Evil Dead 2, it's Annie, the one character Annie, who's like the daughter of the Egyptologist that originally found the Necronomicon, and she's trying to like recite the pages and like ends up like getting killed like halfway through, basically.
Right, they end up summoning the Evil Dead from like a recording that her father did of him summoning them.
Yeah, and so when she's trying to like put it all right in the end, she ends up getting killed, and like, eventually, like they're able to open up the portal, but then like at that point, Ash already gets sucked into it. And then in Army of Darkness, the same thing. He finds the books, and he forgot the last word of the phrase, which ends up being Klaatu Barada Nikto, which is of course a reference to the day the earth stood still. But like, he can't remember and he's trying to like figure it out, and he can't, and then it like makes everything fuck up again for him, and of course it like this like basically summons the Army of Darkness, and he just ends up getting screwed.
Yeah, he is inadvertently a self-sabotaging SOB, and it sucks. He's a poor bastard, as we like to say in my neck of the woods.
Yes.
And the guy just can't catch a freaking break.
No.
He really can't. He can't even get the girl because they end up dying half the time. It's like this, like he just can't. It's like he's that guy that you always root for, but something bad is always happening to him, and you
Yes.
don't know why. He's just one of those people where you're just like, you know, like he's one of those people where at night if you're praying, like you go to church and you just sit down and you go to pray and your only prayer is, God, why do you hate this man so much?
Yeah. Poor Ash Williams.
Can't you do something nice for Ash? What did
Especially
he
because
ever
he's
do to
like
you?
it's single-handedly fighting all these demons like they're nothing, and destroying them all, so you gotta give him some credit. Like give him a break once, he's killing
Never.
these demons,
The poor bastard. Anyway, so
ends up getting his hand cut off for his troubles,
yeah, just and to top it off, he's pretty much forgotten by time.
Yes. Yeah,
So
he goes back to his job at S-Mart when he finally does get back. And, he's telling his story and basically no one believes him except for like the one like hot chick that works there.
yeah,
And and,
but
and
then
then like
somehow
of
there's
course
a deadite too.
yeah.
So like someone else summoned it, and he's like, "Oh god damn it, I got to do this shit again."
Yeah.
Well, that's the good ending of Army of Darkness. The bad ending
Yes.
is he sleeps too long.
And ends up in a post-apocalyptic future
Yeah.
basically. Which
So
I don't I wish they actually filmed that ending because that would have been a great like alternate ending for like the home video release.
they did. It was
Oh,
on
they
like
did.
yeah, yeah. They it's on the DVD release.
Oh,
Well, I
okay.
mean anything past the DVD release
You're right,
of Army
obviously.
of Darkness. But yeah, they filmed that, and I think that was originally going to be the planned ending, and
Yes,
then
but
they
the
were
studio
like,
said it was too sad.
yeah. So they ended up doing that, but then they followed it up, of course, with you know with Evil Dead in 2013, which is a soft reboot.
Yeah.
Um, because Ash isn't really in a role, but he's there in the post credit scene, and you see like it's basically a retelling of the original where they're in a cabin in the woods and but like they're taking Mia, I believe, over as like it's supposed to be an intervention because
Mhm.
she because like either because I think she is a recovering I think she's a heroin addict that
Yeah.
relapsed or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a very long time, but I liked it. Like it was like it got mixed reviews. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good and truthful. I thought it was nice and gory. It did what it needed to do. And then they did the most recent one, Evil Dead, and then they also did Ash versus Evil Dead, which continues more the Army of Darkness, the main franchise path. And the show, I really enjoyed it. I loved what they did with it, and Lucy Lawless coming back and still being a babe was great.
Mhm.
And they had a really good cast of just like Ash and his like friends that he's kind of like, well, I guess we're the group that has to, stave this off. So it's nice that he's not working as a lone ranger. Um, and I think in the show, it's been a long time since I watched it, but I think in the show he accidentally summons them while he's like drunk trying to impress a girl,
Yeah.
and he accidentally restarts it because he kept the Book of the Dead so that no one else could summon it, and then little did he know, in a drunken incident, he would end up doing it.
Well, it's also it's implied that like he's tried to like destroy the Book of the Dead numerous times, but it keeps
Yeah,
like either coming back or is just indestructible. So he kind of like becomes like the de facto caretaker of it.
right.
His whole thing is like, well, if I hold on to it, then no one else will read from it, and therefore no more deadites will spawn because I won't.
Yeah, I mean it's a good logic, but like, wouldn't
Yeah,
you keep that thing in a safe? Like
I
he
would
just
think
leaves
so.
it out.
Yeah.
But
Especially if he's gonna be drinking, like that's just foolish, to drink and then you go, oh look, what's this book? Let me read from it while I'm drunk,
yeah, but like, why do they have to read from it out loud? It's like, I mean, I don't think we ever see anybody reading it to themselves.
No,
Like,
everyone
yeah,
always reads it.
they
Maybe it's part
always
of the
read it
book.
out. I get,
You're
yeah,
like just by
it must
looking at it, you're compelled to read it out loud.
It must be. It must
Part of the
be that,
evil.
which they kind of take over, which they kind of like allude to that in the less canonized ones, like the more recent ones, like they do get someone to, like they do try to get them to stop doing it or to not read it or to not like go towards it or to stay out of the basement, but they just can't help themselves because the Evil Dead calls them,
Yeah.
and it eventually gets them to do that. But yeah, that's the Evil Dead from 2013. That's about all that I have to say about that. But Ash versus Evil Dead, the show only did 3 seasons, and it pretty much got canceled halfway through,
Hmm.
like the middle of the third season as they were filming it, and they were just like they just got notice from the studio or like the network. Yeah, they got from the network, and they were like okay, well, we've got like 6 more episodes to go. And then the network called and they're like, yeah, this season's going to be it. So just, we figured we'd do it before you ended the show so you could at least like write some kind of an ending for it. And they were like, what the hell? I think it was only planned to go one more season too.
Yeah.
And they just, I think I don't know if it
Which
got greenlit and then they rug pulled them
I
for
guess
like
it
budget
didn't.
cuts, which
It
I
didn't
guess
really.
that must be it. But
It didn't really make sense though, because the series was very well received.
yes,
Um.
I think viewership just dropped in the third season, but the first
Yeah.
2 seasons were really strong.
Yeah. I
And
want to go back and actually
I
watch the
mean,
series because I
I
never watched
remember the
it in its
third,
first run, and I
I
heard very good things
remember,
about it.
yeah, I loved it. I remember the third season just was not promoted at all because I remember when I was waiting for the announcement for Evil Dead for Ash versus Evil Dead season 3 to come out, it just wasn't. You couldn't really find it, and there were very few there were very few posters around town that you could see at all, or
Yeah.
even like web banners or anything around Halloween or anything. And I didn't even know that it was on until I saw it in the until I saw it in like the on demand category because we had like Fios at the time.
Hmm.
So like I just happened to see it either on the TV guide or like in or like on demand, and I was like, why the hell didn't I know about this? It's like
Yeah.
3 episodes in. So I think it was poor promotion that led to poor viewership. And I don't know if that was like an oversight that they
Yeah.
like just missed, and then like because they didn't promote it enough, the viewership dropped, and then
Yeah. That
they
could be.
probably were looking at budgets and they did it, or maybe someone at the top who wasn't crazy about that stuff knew that they were going to start looking for like budget cuts in the third quarter
Yeah.
or fourth quarter, and they were like, okay, well, let's just like, then they just kind of sabotaged it. But it got a raw deal as far as the conclusion. It would be
Yeah.
nice if they would be able to like, just redo a final season or redo a movie or something like, or like redo it with like a straight to like streaming movie or something to just put a nice bow on it. But if they don't,
Yeah.
they don't. It is what it is.
It's a shame they didn't get picked up by like an actual like,
Like
because
Shutter or something would have been great.
or even like FX or USA or something like that. Like they could have cleaned it up a little bit and made it like a little bit more appropriate for cable television. Not like
Yeah.
premium television. And I think it would have been done
Well, I
fine.
mean, FX would have been perfect because
Yeah,
FX is like it's
they're
not
okay
quite
with
pre.
gore.
Yeah, like FX, they pretty much like they know what the channel is and they know who their audience is, so they kind of just
Yeah,
give you like carte blanche.
yeah. Uh, I mean, they probably wouldn't have had as big of a budget as Stars would have given them. I'm sure because Stars is a premium channel. They have a larger budget for their shows. But like of all the premium channels, I feel like Stars is like the least. Like everyone's like, okay, yeah, HBO, Cinemax, like that kind of thing. Like people really don't talk about Stars that much. Like I don't
No,
think.
no one talks about stars. People will talk about Showtime before they
Yeah,
talk about
Showtime.
stars.
Yeah, Showtime was known for like a number of good series. I think like Rome or whatever was on Showtime or Spartacus. I don't. There was a
Yeah,
couple of good
Spartacus.
ones.
Well, Spartacus was pretty good, and it was helping that network out a lot. But I think the lead actor ended up getting cancer and passed away, like
Yes.
while they were filming or something.
Yeah.
Um, and I think they had Ray Donovan also. I forget if Ray Donovan was Showtime or HBO, but Ray Donovan was okay for like the first couple of
Oh,
seasons, and then
Spartacus
it
was
got
actually on
really weird.
Stars.
Oh, really?
Wow, yeah.
Huh. Fooled me. Well, yeah, but anyway, I don't understand why it went the way it went, but it would have been nice if somebody like picked it up to do it to like
Yeah.
just give it a proper send off. But if they do, that's the way it is.
Well, especially because, again, why USA, it would have been good on USA is that Bruce Campbell had already been on Burn Notice, which was a huge show on USA.
Yeah,
And, he was his character was like beloved. Like he was like one of the
yeah.
favorites of that show. Um, so I think it would have worked perfectly because you already had the audience that had watched Burn Notice and like, wanted more Bruce Campbell. So,
Right, and I believe at some point USA had like they had acquired like the rights or gotten like a licensing fee to re-air the old like Hercules and Xena episodes at one
oh,
point
yeah.
in time. So like it was kind of like the home of Bruce Campbell on on like cable TV.
Yeah.
So that would have made sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to get to like Evil Dead Rise really quickly, and then we can go on to like all of the other things that Evil Dead
Mhm.
has done because I know you're on a time crunch today.
Yep.
But like have you seen Evil Dead Rise?
I have not. No,
Okay,
heard
well,
it was also. Heard good things about it also, but I have not seen it.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. That one came out last year, and it was nice and gory. It was well, I'm sorry, no, it came out earlier this year. What am I saying?
Yeah.
I wow, that was really April. I feel like that was like a year and a half ago. That's nuts.
Time flies so fast, you don't even know
Yeah,
what day it is
I
anymore.
really don't. But I loved it. I had a great time. The missus doesn't appreciate excessive gore, and
Yeah.
understandably so. But she was a trooper through it, and she liked it, and she liked it enough to sit there with her eyes open.
Nice.
Thankfully, it didn't. Thankfully, she wasn't traumatized like when she saw the first Terrifier movie. I felt bad with that one because I didn't know what to expect either, and that was that's about as gory as you can get. The second one, she was like, "No, you just go to the movie theaters by yourself. I'm going to bed." So I did. But Evil Dead Rise, I enjoyed it, and I loved how the setup was that you thought that it was going to be again in the cabin in the woods, and that's only the first 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and the rest of the movie is just it is what it is because it's so new. I don't want to ruin it for people.
Yeah.
I mean, the other ones have been around for quite some time, so I mean, if you haven't seen it, you really ought to get your shit together and go watch this stuff. But Evil Dead Rise, I won't spoil it, but I really enjoyed it, and I loved
Yeah.
how menacing they made the mother in this,
Yeah.
and how much more sinister and vile the Evil Dead are in this one.
Yeah.
So I liked that one. I liked it a lot because it
Well, and
was
I think
very different.
the newer ones, like the Evil Dead reboot and this one, I also like that it's like not like just completely like a remake of the first, movies. Like Evil Dead, the new Evil Dead that came out a few years ago is it's within the continuity of Evil Dead. Like Ash like makes a cameo appearance in it.
Yes, he does. So I guess you
And
could say it's sort of in the same universe.
yeah, it's in the same universe. It just happens at a different time, basically. Like it's like
Yeah.
just another group of kids, like young people or young adults that like get sucked in and like read the fucking Necronomicon. And
Right.
this is a kind of a continuation of that. Like it doesn't like it's just a new group of people. Like yeah, Ash is still exists in this universe. He's just not in like with this group of people that get
Right.
like
Oh,
attacked.
yes. Back sorry, real quick. Just back to what we were saying with Ash versus Evil Dead. It actually turns out that well, I don't know if this is still the case, but as of last July, July 2022, there would be Bruce Campbell has said that there is an animated revival of Ash versus Evil Dead in
Oh,
development. I
that's
don't know if it still is, but maybe we'll actually get the proper send off in that way, and that would be pretty cool.
yeah.
It would probably also be cheaper, and they might really be able to do really well
Well, again,
with
with like
that.
with stuff like
Especially if
Netflix
they do it in like the
now.
Castlevania sort of way.
Exactly, they could do it like the Castlevania anime, and well, I don't know if it's really an anime, the Castlevania cartoon. I don't know.
I'm not sure what it is. It's just great.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the new the new one just yet,
yeah,
but I
me
heard
neither. I
that's
haven't
pretty
watched
good
it yet.
too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've got that. But there is what I was gonna say was, and then we can start talking about all of the other mediums that that Evil Dead has transcended. But um, there is a theory that connects all of the Evil Dead movies, and it's rooted in Army of Darkness because, like we were saying before, there gets to a point where he has to retrieve the Book of the Dead from this enchanted forest in a way. I guess well, it's not really enchanted, but he's got to retrieve the Book of the Dead from its resting place and say the words. And it turns out that there are three books of the dead,
Hmm.
and and they like each of them harm him in a way. Well, two out of three of them harm him in a way, and they each look a little different. And each book of the dead looks very different, and they summon different type of demons. Like one, I think the theory is that the Kandarian demon is only in the main Evil Dead movies, and we get different demons that are summoned the um, from the from like from the 2013 and the 2023 versions. Interesting that the reboots happened 10 years apart.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, I so the theory is that those books of the dead in those films are the other two,
Hmm. That could be.
and
That's
that in
interesting.
Ash versus Evil Dead he's carrying the main one that summons the Kandarian demons.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting theory that ties everything together and puts it into the same universe. But as we were saying, Evil Dead has transcended film. It's you can see this across. You can see this in various video games of they of varying reviews depending on which games you played. Um, the more recent one, I don't know if it's the same studio that did the Friday the 13th one, and also and um the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one and the Killer Clowns from Outer Space one. They all have a similar type of gameplay where it's like meant to be like a multiplayer online game
Yeah.
where you're either the protagonist or the antagonist. So you're either trying to you're either trying to get rid of the evil dead and stop them, or you are the evil dead and you have to possess everybody.
Yeah.
Um, which I that got pretty good reviews. I don't know how often people really. The thing is with games like that, and I think the other ones got similar, like really well receptions. But the thing about games like that is because they're so niche and so themed to a particular movie and a particular season, where I don't know how short the shelf life is on the
It's
actual online playability. I imagine it's pretty
yeah.
short.
It's
Like
hard with
after
those games because
I feel like after Halloween, no one's really playing it anymore.
well, the problem is if they don't catch on, they don't like there are ones that like catch on like that, like Dead by Daylight became really big for a while because of streamers playing it. And
Mm,
I think the problem is that if it doesn't get like that, it doesn't catch on and it doesn't get popular enough, they end up abandoning it, and then there's no one that actually plays it because it's like basically multiplayer only, you know. So it doesn't. It's not like people can go back and play like a single player story mode. You know, it's only
mm.
multiplayer. So when like the player base falls off, then basically the game becomes like nothing. You know. And that's a big problem with a lot of these games. I think it was the problem with the Friday the 13th game too, is that it had like when it first came out, it had this huge like spike in players, and then people like lost interest too quick, and they couldn't like keep the player base like going, you know?
Mm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's also various other Evil Dead video games,
Yes.
which they're
They've gotten
They're
mixed reviews. They're not the
yeah, they're
greatest. They were kind of just like hack and slash.
yeah, they're to be desired. I played Fistful of Boomstick. I don't know. I think I've played a little bit of Hail to the King. I never played Regeneration or Army of Darkness. There's actually a lot of video games.
Yeah.
There's like maybe 10 that have come out, including a pinball game. That's weird. But
Yeah.
yeah, I played Fistful of Boomstick for the Xbox a lot more than I played the other few that I played, and it was just okay. I It just gets very repetitive after a while, and it's kind of like I'm glad that it exists, but they're like I'm not real. After a while, you're not really that interested in playing it, and some of them are a little bit buggy.
Yeah.
But they're I can't say that I expect. I can't say that when I played them that I expected anything like to blow me away. So it pretty much did what I thought it would do. But he
Yeah.
was also supposed to be. Um, he was supposed to be. Rumor has it, Ash was supposed to be a playable DLC character in Mortal Kombat 11,
Hmm.
and that NetherRealm made the character. They made the move set. And may have even recorded dialogue from Bruce Campbell, and everything was ready to go but they had trouble securing the rights to use the character, and I think it had something to do with whoever owns the first Evil Dead rights.
Huh.
So for some reason they had trouble securing the character, and he's just sitting there, and I think they replaced him with the Joker character. For like there was one of the DLC characters that they just kind of threw in there. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was one of the DLC characters that they've had in like previous games where like the Joker obviously in the Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe one. So I think that that's why he's in the game, and it's because for some reason they couldn't get the rights to put Ash in there.
Hmm.
You can play him in this fighting game called Terrordrome that perhaps at some point in time we could do an episode on because it's really interesting. If you can figure out how to actually download the first one, they're making
Oh
a
yeah. I think we talked
sequel
about this
of
on the
original
last.
IP.
Did we talk about this on the last show? Or did we?
Um,
Or did we talk about it off the air? I don't remember now.
we may have talked about it off the air,
Yeah.
but like Terrordrome is an interesting thing that I've recently stumbled upon, and if you if you want to find out about that, wait for an episode or just go on YouTube and like look it up. It's pretty damn cool.
Mhm.
I would also want to say there's also Army of Darkness comic books and Ash versus Evil Dead comic books and Ash versus varying horror icons, and I believe he's even in Marvel Zombies in one of them.
Mhm.
But yeah, like what other horror what other horror film do you know that has a ton of video games, mainstream appeal now, and also has had several lines of its own comic book?
There's really not, and I would say there's no character like Ash from a horror genre film that is like a protagonist from a horror film that is as popular as Ash. Like whenever you
No.
think of like famous horror film characters, it's always the slasher, like Michael Myers, Freddy, Jason, that kind of thing. There really isn't like you're not like thinking about Laurie Strode or whatever. Like, yeah, okay, Laurie Strode is kind of popular because they brought her back for like the newer Halloween movies, but like she can't hold a candle to Ash Williams, you know. And Ash, I think, was voted like one of the number one horror characters of all time, uh,
Yeah.
a number of times. And he really stands up more than any of them, and maybe that's because like he kind of became more of like an action hero, in the later films. But and in the show, but I don't know. It just there really isn't anybody that stands close to that. And there's horror films like Halloween, like I had said, that like yeah, okay, it's probably on the same level of Evil Dead in terms of the cultural impact, but again, whenever you think of Halloween, you think of Michael Myers. You don't think of the hero, you think of the killer. You know, so really, that's I think Evil Dead as the franchise is really unique in that aspect, is that they made this hero that survives all the movies, doesn't get killed like most horror movies. Everyone dies by the end of it. Um, and
Yeah.
became this cultural icon because of his
Well,
catchphrases and
he never has
his
sex.
attitude.
He never has sex. You never see him have
That's true.
sex.
That's true.
Anytime he gets close enough, the girl either is too drunk and passes out, or she becomes a deadite. So we never
Yes.
see him have sex.
Yeah.
So everybody, I guess virginity is the secret.
Well, I mean, he does
That's
have sex because
according
he
to
has a
Scream.
daughter in the series, so he has at some point had sex, just not on camera.
Yes, as long as you don't do it on camera,
Yeah.
then you're okay. That has a few meanings.
Yeah,
I wish I
exactly.
didn't say that.
Oh god.
Anyway, but yeah, the most known Evil Dead comic book is Freddy versus Jason versus Ash,
Yeah.
which I actually have heard that there was originally going to be there like that the original idea for Freddy versus Jason, which could be another movie we talk about one day, but the original idea was Freddy versus Jason was supposed to be Freddy versus Jason versus Pinhead, and then at the end of that movie Ash was supposedly going to make a cameo in the original script
Hmm.
at the very end to like tease that. And I think that's where it comes from, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, and I think Pinhead maybe shows up at the end, and I think there is another one where there's an Ash versus Pinhead mini series too.
Hmm.
There was supposed to be an official board game that got funded about it was supposed to be Evil Dead the board game, and there was Space Ghost Productions was the people who were going to make it. It got funded through Kickstarter in 2018, and these jackasses never made the game, and they never refunded the investors any money. So they just took off with it, and no one knows what happens. They won't talk about the game with any media. They won't like they're just gone. The company just disappeared. So that wasn't cool, but here's something that is cool that the fans made. Evil Dead has its own musical.
Yes.
Yes, now other horror genres, other horror movies have adapted this, and they have done some. Like there's Silence, which is the Silence of the Lambs one, and I believe that there is also a Reanimator the musical. I actually
There's
watched Reanimator
Beetlejuice.
tonight. Yeah, there is Beetlejuice, which is the biggest budget one. I
Yeah.
never got to saw it, but I never got to see it, but I heard it was freaking awesome, and I would like to. I think it won some Tonys actually, or at
Yes.
least was nominated.
Yeah.
So good for that. But Evil Dead the musical exists. It's playing I think tonight and tomorrow in Red Bank, New Jersey,
Oh, that's awesome.
and in Connecticut some other day over this weekend. But I will not be able to go to either of them. Unfortunately, they like never come to New York City anymore. I don't know why. But it's like a Canadian troupe, I believe, that makes this, and I don't know why they don't. I don't know why it's not. They don't do it anymore. But well, at least in here.
Yeah.
But it pretty much shows up every Halloween now. For a while, it was only on a short run in like 2007, and then they started, pun intended, resurrecting it every year or so for Halloween, and they just do like a quick tour because, well, of course, it was successful.
Yeah.
There is apparently a show. Apparently was a show in 2017 that Rob Kemp. I don't. He's an English comedian, but I don't know who he is. Really, like I'm not familiar with his work, but there is the Elvis Dead, which is Evil Dead in the style of Elvis Presley. I would be curious to see how that works. There
Hmm.
are also a bunch of spin-offs of Evil Dead and like obvious parodies that Bruce Campbell has either starred in or had nothing to do with. So it's interesting, like the Casa, like La Casa, um, Ghost House, and a bunch of other things that are like obviously like total ripoffs. And the ones that he's been in um, were Bubba Hotep and My Name is Bruce. Dead Alive follows something similar.
Hmm.
So does Tucker and Dale versus Evil. There's a lot of homage shows that have come off of this too.
Yeah.
I would say, just to put a bow on this one, because I know it's coming close, but just want to leave people on recent developments of future things of what may come of this.
Hmm.
So Bruce Campbell had once upon a time said that he was going to that he had retired from playing the character like in a live action setting, but he would still voice him in animation, which the animation thing we've covered. But and this is the most interesting thing, is that the success of Evil Dead Rise actually sparked a whole creative like revival for between Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi. In March, he actually like Sam Raimi was doing a they were doing a panel or an interview or something, him and Bruce Campbell, and then Sam Raimi said like the last two Evil Dead movies, Sam Raimi did not direct. I think Fede Alvarez did the last one, and I forget who did the 2013 one. It was no Fede Alvarez did the 2013, and Lee Cronin did Evil Dead Rise. Um, but but Sam Raimi said in an interview, I want to do them again. I would like to do some Evil Dead sequels, or at least some sequels to Evil Dead Rise, or doing something. And then Bruce Campbell saw like he was a producer on Evil Dead Rise, so he helped
Hmm.
steer the ship, and he was like, you know, this was really good. I if Sam Raimi wanted to if Sam Raimi wanted to do Evil like an Evil Dead sequel with me, then I would do it. So we might actually get some. We might get some sequels, and maybe they would even finish. Maybe that would be a movie that would be able to finish off Ash versus Evil Dead, or something of that nature.
Hmm.
Um, so that's plausible.
Yeah.
Lee Cronin also has ideas for future Evil Dead movies. Um, that could be sequels to Evil Dead Rise,
Hmm.
and also Sam and Ivan Raimi are co-writing a Bible of sorts, which was described as a Bible to outline the future of the Evil Dead franchise,
Hmm.
and they are like they want films to follow. They like this guideline is like just basically a template for like if you want to make a movie like if anyone's gonna make an Evil Dead movie, this is this is where the story has to go.
Yeah.
So there's like plans that include releasing a new film in the franchise every couple of years, as opposed to every decade, like we said before. So that that would be awesome
Yeah.
if well, it would be awesome just as long as it doesn't become like the Kiss of horror movies, like
Yeah.
because I don't want like a whole like Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley effect where they just like overexpose this thing to death.
Yeah.
Um, but that's kind of what the other like main slasher movies are for. Like those things just kept getting redone.
Yeah.
I will say at least the last Hellraiser was pretty good because
Yeah.
Clive Barker had a big hand in it. I
Yeah.
can't say the same for Halloween. Halloween was kind of hit and miss. I thought the first one was okay, and
I
Halloween Ends was awful.
I thought it was kind of dumb that they like if they want to like disregard like all the shitty Halloweens, fine, but like they also like kind of disregarded Halloween 2, which I thought was stupid because like Halloween 2 was kind of like acclaimed at the time, and it was like it's a well,
Yeah.
liked movie. It wasn't as good as the first one, but people still liked Halloween 2, and it's like they decided, oh no, that's not canon anymore either. We're just gonna do this whole reboot of the whole series, which
Yeah,
is
I thought that
whatever.
was dumb.
Yeah,
I mean, even the same thing with the Rob Zombie one. Like the first one was good, the second one is awful.
yeah. The second one was not
Um,
good, but the second
there's
original
something
Halloween
about
movie was good.
there's something about that franchise where only the first sequel is the only sequel that's any good, really.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I like all the Halloween movies. They're like even the bad ones are like guilty pleasure movies for me. Like I'll watch them even though they're stupid. You know, like Halloween, like Revenge of Michael Myers and Halloween H2O and shit like that. Like
Mm. Yeah, just Buster Rhymes in that movie is just funny.
no, it
But
was LL Cool J.
I thought Buster Rhymes was in H2O.
No, LL Cool J was.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
he
I'll take
plays
your
the
word
security
for it.
guard at the school or whatever.
Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure. Well, anyway, it doesn't. Oh no, Buster Rhymes was in the the vampire movie. I
A
think.
vampire movie.
Right? Was he in a John Carpenter vampire movie? I can't remember. Well, either way, he wasn't in a good horror movie. It wasn't good. Um, but yeah, just back to Evil Dead.
Oh, he was in
I
Halloween Resurrection, which was
that's what I'm thinking of.
yeah, which was
Resurrection is
really bad.
awful. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but what I was gonna say is, I mean, just the last thing that I really wanted to say is just given that we know that Ash was a planned character in Mortal Kombat 11 and it didn't come together. Maybe they'll be able to fix it up for Mortal Kombat 1 since that just came out.
yeah.
So I mean, and that would probably be an easy port that they could just they could just re-render it for for the PS5 and just throw them in there. That would
Yeah.
be a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it can always be a DLC character too.
well, that's what I mean. That's what he was
Yeah.
originally supposed to be. So maybe they'll be able to to lock down whatever they couldn't in
Yeah.
the last game, and they could like hash it out and get him in there because that character needs like Ash is the perfect. He's the perfect crossover character for Mortal Kombat.
Yes. Well, and they've had, I'm pretty sure, horror characters in.
They
I think
have. They've had. They've
Michael
had
Myers or
Freddy.
something,
Yeah,
or
they've had
Freddy.
Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers.
Yeah. And they did some 80s action movie stars too. They had Terminator. They had
Yeah, RoboCop.
RoboCop. They had Rambo. So I
Yeah.
definitely think Ash would be a perfect fit in Mortal Kombat.
I mean, they even had Spawn. I mean, if they had Spawn, I'm surprised there hasn't been a Spawn Evil Dead crossover. I feel like that would be I feel like that would be perfect. I
Yes,
would
it
love
would.
to see that.
Yeah, or even like an Evil Dead Constantine or Hellblazer crossover.
Yeah, there's a lot that they could do with Ash.
Yeah.
That there's a lot that can still be done. Let's say that. But
Yes.
like that's another thing. Evil Dead because it's so self-contained and there's such a love for it that anyone else who decides to like work on this does a great job with it. It's one of those things where you like seeing another version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can't say for most other things. Like with Evil Dead, when you hear a new Evil Dead, even if Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell don't really have much to do with it, you still look forward to it, and and the directors do a pretty good job. So, I really can't say the same for anything else. If if they announced another Friday the 13th tomorrow, I would probably be like, why are they doing this? Or something like that. But with I'm excited for more Evil Dead movies.
Yeah.
And like this is my favorite horror franchise if you haven't figured it out. And they're like some of my favorite, like it's just it wins every time for me. I love there's there's no film or medium that I really I don't dislike anything about this at all. There's nothing that's been done that I've seen that I've thought was that I've disliked.
Hmm.
Like even the video games that were just okay, I still enjoyed playing them
Yeah.
until I just no longer felt like playing them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I hold this one near and dear to my heart. I considered every once in a while I go back to the idea, but I considered getting an Evil Dead tattoo at points in time. I don't think I will because there's like I I have the whole like thing laid out and like there's just of like what I'd like and where I'd like it to go, and where I had originally pictured placing the Evil Dead tattoos and what the Evil Dead tattoo would look like. I think I just want to keep the one thing that's already there,
Yeah.
and like possibly just add like one thing to it to make it to like to enhance the tattoo itself that's
Y-
already there.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think I want to get anything else there. So maybe I'll change my mind and I'll find something else to somewhere else to put it, and maybe I'll get it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But for me, Evil Dead is the greatest thing.
Yeah. It is very great. It's special.
Yeah,
It's
they did recently do a Magic the Gathering
I
crossover
did see
Secret
that
Lair,
actually
which was
recently too.
it.
Like literally advertised today, so it must have been fucking like watching me, knowing that I was looking up Evil Dead and I watched Evil Dead 2
Yeah,
because I
I didn't
just
get it
got the
because the Secret Lairs are overpriced, and like if I really want them that bad, I'll get them on the secondary market. But
yeah,
like it was okay. The only thing that I will say is they did Ash dirty by not making him legendary. It
yeah,
like that was dumb.
yes,
They made his girlfriend like a reskin of a legendary creature and not Ash. Ash was like just they did that wrong.
yeah,
There was like many other characters that they could. There were many other people. There were many other legendary characters that they actually should have done that they didn't do. So it was a missed opportunity in the design floor. But it whatever exists is out there into the world. I will say that this was like a reskinning is how these weird universes beyond things should be done, and not functionally unique nonsense like they keep doing.
yeah,
But that I've said my piece on Magic because we're not going to be here for 3 hours again. Um, if you want to hear me
yeah.
lament about that game or gush about the game,
Go listen
then
to our Magic the
listen to
Gathering
our
podcast.
yes, we did 2 episodes. One on how the game is great, and two on how
It's bad.
Hasbro and the management of the game is awful.
It was the
So
duality of Magic the Gathering.
yes, that's what it is. But yeah, you could go back in time to like February or whenever the hell we did it, and catch that. But for now, Evil Dead is the greatest thing. I love it, and pun intended, I love it to death and beyond.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what else they do with this thing.
Yep.
As time continues.
Yep. Hail to the
But
king, baby.
hail to the king, baby. All right. Well, we've come to the end of this show, and we want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your precious day to, well, to give this a listen. And we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed yourself. And if you haven't checked out Evil Dead stuff, we hope you go check it out now. And we hope
Yeah.
you learned something. But we most importantly hope that you go out there, you have a safe Halloween, you have a very happy Halloween. If you got a family, we hope that your kids get a lot of candy and and that they keep you up all night because they've been eating lots of candy and sugar because you weren't paying attention because you were playing the Evil Dead video game, and you've decided to torture your children by making them watch the Evil Dead movies. But we hope that it backfires on you completely and they're not scared and they love it, so that all of you can go to the movies down the road together and watch Evil Dead together in the theaters.
Hmm.
How's that? We wishing you a happy and healthy Halloween from the folks at Why Does This Exist? Speaking of which, this has been Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And remember, Question everything.
Good night, everybody.